And I had been the most successful sales rep out of my 100-person training class, and I didn't even know it. And that was the first time in my life that I felt like I belonged somewhere. And it was this really important moment that set me on this trajectory that now in my business, Bill, that's been very successful, launched 1,000 websites, helped 1,000 authors become #1 bestsellers. I've built multi-million-dollar brands. I've made incalculable change and impact. I've shaped industries. I've won big, difficult awards. But really, at the end of all of that, why I'm here is because I am on this mission to help individuals feel heard, seen, and valued.
Amber Vilhauer is a books and business strategist, multi-bestselling author, speaker, and founder of NGNG Enterprises, an Inc. 5000 top marketing agency. Amber has helped thousands of entrepreneurs align their business with their core talents and desires to naturally scale revenue and impact. She does this by implementing custom marketing strategies, launching best-selling books, and growing engaged followings that convert. She's the author of Infinite Impact and co-author of The Long Forest Trail with her son, Clay. Now let's unravel the fingerprints on success of Amber Vilhauer. Amber Vilhauer, how are you today? And welcome to Fingerprints on Success.
This is such a fun moment for me, Bill. Like knowing you the years I've known you, watching your success with the podcast, the audience that you're building. It is really, truly a treat for me to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, well, so full disclosure to our audience, I have to tell them that there wouldn't be Fingerprints on Success as a podcast if it wasn't for you, because you were really the person who was able to educate me on what I had to do and get me going in the right direction to get it off the ground. So I am forever grateful for that, because I wouldn't have been able to do this without you. And, with that as a little disclosure to the audience, I think it would be great if we could start off by maybe you telling us a little bit about your story. And obviously you have NGNG Enterprises, books and business, and you're doing a ton of speaking around the country. But why don't you tell everyone, how did all this start and how did you get to this point?
Thank you. It feels like divine intervention, to be honest with you, Bill, because this was not the life that I planned since I was a little kid. I didn't have a big business proposal when I first got started. I have a little bit of an unusual story here. I grew up with a hardworking single mom, an older sister, and I felt alone a lot growing up. I knew I was loved. I knew I was safe, but I was lonely. I didn't know how to make friends at school. And so I was kind of like the weird loser kid on the side of the playground that didn't understand why people didn't like me. And that feeling just expanded the older that I got into high school. I still wasn't making friends, and I just sort of started caving in. And it showed up on my grades. I was failing out of algebra my freshman year. I started hanging out with people that were, quote, what I thought were good enough for me based on what I was feeling inside, which were not good people. And my story that has been published online, it sort of culminates when I was 16 years old. And I found myself at a party that I did not know was set up for me. And when I walked in that night, I got jumped by 5 girls. And
oh my God, literally jumped.
I got jumped.
Oh my gosh.
It was horrible. And so I know I'm presenting this in a lighter way so that it doesn't feel too much for the audience, but it was intense, to say the least. And it was also this beautiful moment, right? Some of our biggest pain can be such a gift if we just look at it differently. And the gift for me was that night when I was getting beaten up and surrounded by there's about 80 people watching this happen. No one was saving me. And it was in that moment that I realized nobody would save me, that I needed to step in and save me. And it sort of became this really important lesson for taking my life into my own hands for the first time. So what you saw as a result, I graduated with honors. I departed that high school experience and went into college where I was learning about art and I was expressing myself, and I was learning about marketing and sales and business. And I really had no ambitions for what I was going to do with my degree. And on the side, I got a little job selling Cutco cutlery, which is high-end kitchen knives. So I'm one of
I'm
those.
very familiar. I've been a customer.
Yes. And honestly, talk about a shock, Bill, because here's somebody who is deeply insecure, didn't know how to use her voice in the world, didn't have friends, didn't really know how to communicate. And now I'm selling knives on the side of going to school, like divine intervention. It was a total disconnect. But what happened was they said, and I think this is important to share, in training, they said there are three types of people in the world. There's the person who is the fence sitter. They sit on the fence and they watch what everybody else is doing. The second type of person is the person who dips their pinky toe into the pool to test the waters. And the third type of person is the person who jumps in with both feet. And I thought, I don't know what in the heck I'm doing here, but I know I want to be that third person. So I did what they told me to do. I launched that weekend. I had no idea if I was successful or not. I walked in advanced training on Monday morning, and I was surrounded by applause, Bill. And I had been the most successful sales rep out of my 100-person training class, and I didn't even know it. And that was the first time in my life that I felt like I belonged somewhere. And it was this really important moment that set me on this trajectory that now in my business, Bill, that's been very successful, launched 1,000 websites, helped 1,000 authors become #1 bestsellers. I've built multi-million-dollar brands. I've made incalculable change and impact. I've shaped industries. I've won big, difficult awards. But really, at the end of all of that, why I'm here is because I am on this mission to help individuals feel heard, seen, and valued. It's the very thing that I always wanted growing up. And now I have the opportunity to give that every day to other people. So I am deeply grateful and fulfilled for the moment that I got beat up when I was 16, because it got me here.
Well, listen, our past shapes our future in many, many ways, and turning a negative experience into motivation and kind of a path forward. It's quite a story. Give me a little sense too. I think it's just good for our audience to understand too, like the types of things that you do for your clients specifically, because I think it's a really, you're very unique. Like some people might describe you as marketing, right? They might say, "Oh,
Totally.
I know Amber Vilhauer. She has a marketing company," but it's really a lot more than that. So I think it'd be great if you kind of share that with everyone.
Yeah. So what happened was after Cutco, I found my way into the online world, and I was really excited and curious and challenged by it. So I ended up actually teaching myself code. I built my own website, and I started blogging about the things that I was learning about. This was about 2006. So that was before a lot of what the internet turned into today, of course. And what happened was a woman in Canada reached out and said, "I found you through Google, through one of your blog posts. I love what you're about. Could you build me a website and help manage a guest blogging operation for my company?" And I said, "Who, me? Like, I guess I could do that." And that is literally how the company was formed, Bill. I also had a head of a publishing company reach out and ask if she could pay me to teach me how to launch books so that I could launch books for her authors. So like divine intervention hits again. Along the way, a friend said, "I think you should file an LLC for this." And I said, "What's an LLC? Like, where do you do that?" That's how little knowledge I had about business. I picked NGNG because my mom said to me all the time, "No guts, no glory," growing up. And what happened, Bill, is then the next person would come in and say, "Could you design an ebook for me?" And I said, "Absolutely, I can do that." And if I didn't know how to do it, I would research it. I would knock it out of the park because I had a set of non-negotiables in business that carried me through the lack of knowledge that I had in every other area. But what you saw over the next almost 2 decades that I've been a CEO We have designed logos, we've built brands, we've helped inform proper messaging that's in alignment, especially based on what's happening in the economy right now. We were building websites, we've designed marketing plans and strategies, hired team members, trained those team members, protected the CEO so they could have more autonomy in their business and really focus in on what they're best at, not the minutia. Help them with writing, developing the book, publishing the book, and especially with with a focus on a sales model, because this is where actually most people fail, is they don't know how to sell or what to sell or the customer journey. It's a very confusing area to have an online business. And then bonus, tying all of those pieces together so that your company is operating in congruence. Really tough to find somebody that can do all of those different facets. And I was able to, because I'm a deep researcher, I'm a learner. I love executing and implementing and growing and optimizing. I mean, I'm a total nerd for stuff like this. So I built my company around it, and we've seen great success. The only other thing that I would mention here is that I've scaled down on the service side over the last year. We had Inc. 5000. We were one of the top advertising companies in America in 2022. I had a team of 37 people. We were running the show. Unfortunately, I wasn't very happy. I missed a lot of my one-on-one client interactions. So I scaled back down, took on less clients, higher responsibility. And then I opened up a membership so that more entrepreneurs could get access to me more often at a far reduced price point. But then that would also help me to eliminate the need for so many team members that I was responsible for. I also do some in-person events. I actually have a certification program so people can do my work in their company and make money. And I do speaking, as you mentioned. So I have all sorts of fun pet projects laying around that keep me happy and keep my cat growing.
Well, I definitely at some point want to talk about those books that are behind you for sure. But first, you just when you were going through that, you mentioned your non-negotiables. You made a reference to the tell me a little bit about the non-negotiables. What is that, first of all? And is that something that our entrepreneurs that are listening should be thinking about, their own non-negotiables? But tell me a little bit about that.
1,000%. In fact, as you mentioned, I just launched a book. It's called Infinite Impact, and it's really the entrepreneur's strategic guide to books and business success. And I really go into detail about my story because I've been able to optimize in pretty remarkable ways. But in the story, I talk about, since I didn't know what I was doing, I started with these non-negotiables, and I do encourage entrepreneurs to consider that, because this world is very overwhelming and we can get lost in it very quickly. So mine are pretty basic, Bill, to be honest with you. For example, number one is I didn't spend more money than I was bringing in. I mean, novel concepts, but right. I didn't want to get into debt. So in 17 years, I've never once been in debt. I've always been in profit. I have cash reserves. I was just really responsible in that way. Another one, this will be very alarming, but treat people well, right? Another one, really alarming, do what you say you're going to do. Very simple things, to be honest, but I knew that if I treated people well, including my team, if I did what I said I was going to do or more, word of mouth would travel. And that's exactly what happened. I have never had to wonder about where my next client is coming from. I barely keep up with the demand all of these years, because it's so rare to find somebody that can do what they say they're going to do, that actually treats you well and knows what they're doing. Give me a break. So it just really worked for us.
Well, you're talking to somebody who's in the legal profession. So needless to say, thank God for the competition, because I took some flack for saying this years ago, actually, when I was on someone's podcast, because they asked about success in growing the law firm and growing the law practice.
Sure.
And I said, I owe a lot of gratitude to all the other lawyers out there, especially the terrible ones who don't return phone calls, who sit in a white ivory tower and bark orders and think they're above everyone, who always need to be the smartest person in the room, who don't have a passion for their clients. And basically, if you have just the basic core values of respect, responsiveness,
Yes.
caring about people, all of a sudden you're a top 20 percenter, which is sad but true. And I think it mimics itself in many professions. And
Definitely.
that if you just have the right core values in place, you immediately put yourself ahead of a lot of the competition. So, as you know, I've written a couple of books, and we talked a little bit before the show started about one that I'm struggling through trying to write right now. But what I want to hear from you, because you have been a part of not only the books you've written, but helped so many people. First of all, tell our entrepreneurs that are listening why you would tell them to think about writing a book, and maybe for the person who's thinking about it but can't do it, like, basically, why would you
Yeah,
do it,
why?
and how do you get off the dime if you want to do it?
Yep. Well, I'm going to zero in on nonfiction because we are talking to a largely entrepreneur audience. Fiction is a very different animal and, not my particular animal. So we zero in on nonfiction, and you're really going to write a book for a couple of different reasons. One is because you see it as a business building opportunity, and you would be right. I don't see a faster way of scaling impact than with a book launch. And that is why you see authors launch again and again and again, because it just pumps tremendous life and revenue and impact into that business. So it can really help give you longevity. Another reason is that you're kind of approaching legacy thinking, and you're in this place. It's like, yep, I got the cars, I got the house, I got the things, I have the money, but like, now what? And what is this next season of life really going to be about? And what am I here to really do and leave behind? And those are some really intense thoughts that can come through. And a book is a really powerful tool to help you navigate through that system and land grounded with passion and purpose and impact. And so honestly, that's kind of my favorite time to work with people, because we can build a tremendous cause-based brand that is so enormously fulfilling. You can't even wrap your brain around it. And then the only other reason is maybe it's a passion project on the side and you don't really have ambitions to necessarily monetize off of it, but maybe it's just because you enjoy it, right? So those are some of like the main reasons. And the author's journey is very complex and it's different for everybody. So the best thing that you can do, if you even have an inkling of maybe someday I'd like to write a book, talk to somebody like me so that you can understand really what you're in for, because it's going to take a lot out of you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially. It's a big investment if you want to do it right. So I'm not talking about writing a book with AI in 15 minutes or launching it over a weekend. Like, if you want to write the good book that people are going to buy and it's going to continue to move beyond you, you want to have a strategic conversation up front to understand what the model can be around it, so that the book has longevity, your brand has a deep ROI, and that you're really protected and feeling fulfilled the whole process, because that is possible. I only share that because that is not the majority's experience, unfortunately. But it's because I can't get the word out fast enough about that there is an alternative path that you could take with a little bit of planning up front.
Yeah, I think it's intimidating for a lot of people too. I know for me, like most entrepreneurs, time is so difficult, right? Finding the time to focus um, even if you have all the right resources in place, you still have to be prepared to dedicate the time. And I think that's one of the things that scares people off, because you got to be prepared to make that commitment to a successful process, right? And but I
Well,
think
yes, and I didn't mean to cut you off,
no,
but
go ahead.
as entrepreneurs, we're like junkies for this stuff, though. I mean, when you find the passion button, good luck trying to pull yourself away from whatever that is. So I think it's more if we can hit that passion button and you already know what's possible for you on the other side of that book in terms of ROI impact, getting in rooms you wouldn't get into otherwise, having strategic partnerships that secure your business. There's so much possibility on the other side of the book. So maybe your passion is the content itself. Maybe your passion is in the growth on the other side or something else. If we can hit that right passion button, I mean, I wrote Infinite Impact, did 20 beta readers and the entire editing process in 7 weeks, Bill. And that is as a single mom, CEO with a thriving business. So you find the time if you understand, if you hit that passion button right on.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't disagree. I mean, having done two, I agree with you. When you really want to get it done, you got to get it done. And I think it's important to know the ideal outcome. What are you trying to accomplish with the book? Now hold up Infinite Impact again. You just held that up.
Thank you. I love holding it up.
Yes, please. And I don't do this for a shameless plug for you. I do it because I'm noticing a little tag on the book that says human made. Tell me about that, because I haven't seen that before.
It's because I made it up. I'm starting a trend.
Well, that would explain it.
I am starting a trend here. So right now, we are in this moment of controversy around AI. And there's one side of the camp that is using AI for good. There's another side that is spreading a lot of misinformation. It's creating disillusionment. It's growing mistrust in ourselves individually. It's collapsing businesses. It's quite destructive so far in another way. And so part of that destructive side is there are literal ads for influencers. There's just so proud of themselves for writing a 260-page book in 15 minutes using AI, publishing it 30 minutes later, making it a #1 bestseller on Amazon, all just because of AI. And that so deeply threatens the publishing industry. And books are not a new thing. I mean, this is a deep bedrock of humanity that is being threatened here. And to me, it actually gets me in fighting mode a little bit, which is really unusual for me, but it's because I want to protect humanity in this way. It's not just spewing out more information. I love AI. I use it every single day in my business. It helps me think. It helps me accelerate. It's great use case internally, but this means that I will never allow it to replace my voice, because my voice was a very unique gift that I was granted through my experience in this life. And I take that very seriously. All of the moments of pain and celebration and loneliness and happiness created this voice on this podcast today. So to have AI replace that just for sake of speed, like, what? I can't handle it. So that's why I wanted to publicly say this book has used zero AI. This book through and through was human made. And you know what? People love it, Bill. They're jumping on the bandwagon. And the other thing that they're doing is you'll see that this book is printed in full color and it has nature images inside and room to write and think and mark it up. That's also incredibly unusual for a nonfiction leadership book. So I think it's a model for go your own way and be fully self-expressed. I'm pretty darn proud of that.
As your attorney, I suggest we trademark that, by the way. Spoiler alert, while this is being recorded, let's make sure we trademark that.
Excellent. Bill's on the case. I wouldn't trust anyone else to help me with that. That's a fact. Hire Bill.
Yeah, I would definitely think that you should protect that. So great. By the way, one of the things that I think I'd really love to ask you, so I will, is, you mentioned and I know how busy you are. You mentioned you're a single mom, yeah. You're a CEO, you're an author, you're traveling around the country, you're doing national speaking engagements. Like, talk to our entrepreneurial women out there about how do you do it? How do you make all those pieces of the puzzle fit together?
I do think I have a mind for Tetris. I'm definitely like one of those dorks that loves packing a suitcase to see how I can get it all to fit perfectly well. So I think part of it is just the brain that I have. So we can thank a lot of the trauma I was in as a kid for giving me this ability. I kid. I think also, Bill, it's just I'm incredibly organized. If I were disorganized, it would never work. But I write everything down, and I follow through on what I say I'm going to do. And that kind of puts this compression, this tension on the schedule that actually helps me. It gives me energy and focus to then, compartmentalize, be hyper present in the moment, saturate, get everything I can out of that one moment, and then release it and move on to the next thing. And it just becomes this rolling flow in my life. So yes, people look at my schedule and they freak out. They literally don't understand how I have this much energy and passion and health, and I'm this busy, but it works for me. And in fact, times when people would say, you need more self-care, you need to take more time off, you're nuts. When I used to listen to that, I would slow down. And guess what? I was super unhappy, wondering what's wrong with me. And then when I would load my plate back up, guess what? I'm in my happy place again. So I think it's just really boiling down to we are all built differently. And your job is to listen to your body. Your body is communicating your capacity and what it needs. And I listen to that all the time. If my body says stop, I stop immediately. I have times like I think I was gone, almost 20 days in May, all on personal trips, because after pushing this book out, doing my events, doing the book launch, my body said, okay, now it's time for a rest. So I went to Belize for 5 days by myself.
Nice.
I took my kiddo on a road trip to Moab. We went rafting in the Arches. I went to Dallas and saw some friends. I went over to Salt Lake City. It's like all of these things because I listened. And I think that's how you can have be and do it all. We get in trouble when we don't listen and push and grind and force and we're out of alignment. I'm deeply in alignment. So everything is harmonious right now. That's what's possible.
Like you said, I think everybody has to find their way. I always found it interesting when people talk about life work balance. I kind of throw the BS flag on that because I honestly don't believe in it. And now some people might say, oh, well, that's so are you just a workaholic or whatever? And
right.
I think and it's really I think a lot of people feel this way. I'm just me, right? So like my family, my interests, my work, my profession, they're all just kind of mishmashed together into one ball. And it's just who I am. So I don't like feel the need to separate them. I don't feel the need like, oh, well, while I'm here, I can't, half my friends are people I am in business with, but not for any particular reason. It's just that I mishmash it all together and it's just kind of the way it is. And I think a lot of people do that. I think this work-life balance concept is like I don't know. I think it's just it sells like self-help programs. I'm not sure. But
again, what it really comes down to, Bill, is if you have somebody that is pushing for work-life balance, it to me, based on all of my experience, signals that you are out of alignment. And so you have to compartmentalize because you are gripping on so tight to control because you don't know what else to do. And the answer is let's go to the root of who you are and get you into alignment, which not to plug the book, but that literally is what part 2 is all about. There's a 4-step process. There's an exercise that's self-guided. You can do it completely on your own with satisfaction and results on the other side pretty simply. But what it does is it points you into the truth of who you are, and it gets you into alignment so that then when you start looking at decision making, it all stems from this one place. So to your point, Bill, that tells me you're in alignment, and I am too, because I don't have to grip and force and control in all of these different areas. I can just show up and be in all of my different roles. Right. It all is the same thing to me, and it's a more natural way of living life, which most people don't have because this stuff hasn't been taught this way, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's just being, right? Like just be who you are. And I think for a lot of our entrepreneurs, that's just how they live their life, especially for entrepreneurs, because your business is part of your DNA. It is part of your
Yes.
life. So tell me about your children's book that I understand. A couple of points I understand. Number one, you co-authored it with your son,
Yes.
which I want to hear about. And number two, that you sold over 7,000 copies within like the first couple of months. Tell me about this book.
So this is kind of a funny story. It was about a year ago, and my then 6-year-old pops into the kitchen while I'm making breakfast, and he says, "Mom, I want to write a book and make lots of money." And I said, "That's great, sweetie. I can help you write a book, but you're not going to make any money off of it." Like, that's sort of the biggest myth. It's what you do with the book to leverage it that can produce millions, right? But it's not necessarily with the book itself. It's circumstantial. Next step is I thought, okay, how the heck do I write a children's book? Because I can launch books, but doesn't mean I know how to write a children's book. Like, that was an interesting journey. So Clay and I started going on these hikes. I have a cabin in the forest. I'm very fortunate with that. And so we go up there in the summertime on the weekends and get away. And there's this long trail that we would walk down. And I would say, okay, so what kind of characters do we want in our book? Do we want it to be animals? Do we want it to be humans? Do we want, mix? And what are they trying to communicate? What's the moral of the story? And he goes, "What's a moral?" And I'm like, "I don't know how to describe this stuff."
Right. You're like, well, that's right. I have to remind myself, my co-author here is 6 years old.
6 years old. Okay. It was definitely a mind bender, but it was so fun. I was like secretly audio recording some of our conversations so we can look back on those later. And anyway, at one point, we're walking down the trail and the aha hits. What if it's a mom and son walking down a long forest trail? And, the 6-year-old comes in, he's like, "We'll start in the fall, and then we'll keep walking into the winter, and we'll keep walking into the spring. And then there's a puppy that comes up, and we'll name him Love Puppy." And I'm like, okay. It was really sweet. But at the end, Bill, we have this book, The Long Forest Trail, that was published in November of 2023. And it really is a conscious, beautiful, well-written book, gorgeous illustrations that really promote human connection and connection with nature. And so when we launched the book, I actually, was in the middle of my own event launch. I had all these other things going on. And so this was sort of like a back burner. You know how that happens sometimes.
Mhm.
Oops. And so what I ended up doing about a week before the launch is I hosted a silent auction. I asked entrepreneurs to contribute items. We had a virtual campaign. We ended up deciding to do that again this April. Between the two silent auctions, we raised almost $30,000.
Oh,
I
wow.
bought author discounted copies of Clay's book. So now I have, about 6,000 or so copies of Clay's book. And then we contacted Boys and Girls Club, for example, and they said, "Oh my gosh, it would just be amazing if we could give those books to our kids. Would Clay be willing to come in and do a reading and a signing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we would love that." So now we're in Boys and Girls Club in front of 50 kids. And those kids, Bill, they just looked up at Clay like with all the admiration in the world. Like, it was the most special thing. It just takes your breath away. So we ended up circulating all of those copies to low income families that wouldn't have access to the book otherwise. And then we've been continuing to sell slowly online. But yeah, that was Clay's dream. And now he hit #1 bestseller as a 7-year-old little punk. And he's great. He's awesome.
That is great. It's a great. I mean, it's unique. So I thought it was worth mentioning. And
Thank you.
one of the things that I've learned over the years too is that whether we realize it or not, all the things we're doing as parents in our not just our personal but professional lives, the little ears are listening. They
Yes.
they totally listen. They know what's going on. They pay attention. They absorb, and even when you don't realize you're making an impact, you're making an impact.
Yeah.
And in a way, being a mentor, which leads me to my next question,
Yeah.
which is, you know, one of the reasons why I named the podcast Fingerprints on Success is really because I love to talk about the people who made a difference, the people who, when I'm talking to a successful entrepreneur and they're reflecting on their life and their success, there's people that they think about where, but for this person, maybe I wouldn't be where I am today, or maybe that was a pivotal moment where it's a huge contributor to my success. Is there anyone that you would share with us that made a huge impact on you, or a mentor, or someone that you think made a big difference for you?
By 100 million miles, the person that has made the most impact on me was my mother. You know, so much of who I am and how I express my sensitive heart, my giving heart, my love of nature, my love of people, the empowerment. I mean, literally all stems back to my mom, both all of the good things that happened and the heartbreaking things that happened. It was her. And I have to give her full credit for that. Her impact is going to spread for generations in so many cultures across the world. Really, truly. I've had other mentors, of course, along the way. An early karate instructor was hugely monumental. Some people in Cutco, hugely monumental. Even Eric Graham, who helped me with the avatar exercise, which I put into the book, which was monumental. It's one of people's favorite parts of getting into alignment. And even in 2019, a mentor, Ken, who I actually opened the book with the story of Ken saying, "Hey, Amber, why do you think you're so busy?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" So there's a beautiful story in there to give Ken a nod. And also, I have what I would call a consciousness coach, Bill, who I speak to almost twice a week, that we go very deep. And he has done so much to help me rebuild my own belief system through a lot of what has happened in the past, and just atone some memories and become a more whole and complete person. So honestly, that saying, it takes a village, it sure did in my case. And I always pay tribute to the individuals, even the ones that just took 5 minutes out of their day to spend with me. It all are the fingerprints, to your point.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your mom. Like, give me a story, something that made an impression on you, or that when you reflect back, you think about kind of the influence.
My mom was definitely multifaceted. I mean, she was an entrepreneur, she was a giver, she was a world traveler. She was a very, complete person. And I remember there were a lot of hiking trips and walks, and we would do overnight camping in the middle of the woods together. And one of the things that she always said was, "Leave the campground better than when you found it." And that one thing, that one time, carried with me. And now, Bill, I'm the person that when I go into a public restroom and I see like the paper towels overflowing and it's all over the floor and it looks awful, I take a new paper towel, I clean up all of that mess, push the paper towels down, and I walk out. And people think I'm nuts, and I think they're nuts. Like, let's just make it a better experience for everybody. No guts, no glory was something that she always said to me growing up. So it was a lot of the phrases, but also my mom regularly pointed me inward for answers. And it was really her constant conditioning to help me cultivate my own intuition and my own discernment ability. And I have to tell you, that has played the most integral role in my life and continues to develop in new and interesting ways as I age. And I mean, I could go on forever. What I talk about in this book, a lot of the life principles that I share in the book almost exclusively came from her, probably. So it's very big and very deep.
Yeah. No, I would say so. So let's finish with this. You've been an author multiple times. You have a very successful company. You've helped people build their successful entrepreneurial businesses through branding, marketing, and otherwise. You're traveling all over. You're speaking all over. You've reached a very high level of success by anyone's measurement. So what's the why? What keeps you going, and what is motivating you to continue to grow your business and to continue to push forward? What gets you excited every day?
So I'll take you back to advanced training Monday morning at Cutco when I felt like I belonged for the first time. And I mentioned that in that moment, I decided to dedicate my life to helping individuals feel heard, seen, and valued. And that is true. In fact, many of the strategies and the operations that I built for entrepreneurs and their company is built with that in mind. So my marketing strategy is, how can we take a video on Instagram and emotionally connect with a viewer and make them feel valued and seen? And so I teach this constantly all day long, everywhere. What's interesting about the foundational framework that I put in the book to get you into alignment is I teach that vision is what we are in service to humanity for. And your why, I actually tilt that, Bill, and I propose a new way of looking at why, because usually it's like, oh, because I want to help people. But I look at why is my vision is what I'm in service to humanity for. My why is how that's in service to me. Because we all have unmet needs. And it's that unmet need that drives an entrepreneur to race at the way that they race, with the intensity and the creativity and the innovation that they have. It actually stems from an unmet need. And when we look at what that is objectively, it's usually something that we missed out on growing up. And it's not me putting on my therapy hat, but it's just like we all had stuff that we didn't get when we were growing up. But that's a really important message and part of our story moving forward. But as entrepreneurs, we're so focused on this vision of helping 10 million people in this way. And we're not really looking at how does that come back to us to fill us up so that we can continue the mission. And so there's a whole exercise on why that points an entrepreneur N-word. And the biggest breakthroughs I've seen in all of my years and all of my work come from that one exercise, Bill. It blows people away. And now, like, for example, I have a client who really boils it down to what he wants to do is give people joy, because ultimately that gives him joy, which is not something he experienced growing up. So now, when he went out to build his logo and his website, he's making decisions on the filter of, does this spark joy? Does this spark joy? Does this spark joy? What's happened in a month is he's doubled his revenue. He is so booked on speaking engagements. Why? Because he's finally in alignment. This is serving the deepest need that this individual has and helping community at the same time. And together we rise. So just wanted to educate on my view of why it is, so that I also feel heard, seen, and valued, which is the unmet need that I'm still filling.
Yeah. Well, no doubt, right? Because the why is, it's what drives you. And I couldn't agree more. And it's something I think that, everybody likes to try to figure out what makes you tick. So, yeah. Well, listen, Amber Vilhauer, I have to thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
So fun.
Thanks for coming on. I'm sure that all the entrepreneurs in our audience will really enjoy the time listening to your story. And thanks so much for coming on. I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Bill.